Cheating husband took selfies for his affair in our son's chemo room, wants his mistress around our kids, and now I'm losing everything. I have 3 kids, 8, 6, and 2 years old. My oldest is fighting cancer. My husband and I had our fair share of occasional conflicts, nothing crazy or constant, but sometimes, even those few clashes left us both feeling unheard and bruised, lost in our defense mechanisms and triggers. I asked him several times if we could see a therapist to get some better tools to resolve things, but he always wanted more time to think about it, never actually agreeing. I ended up starting individual therapy myself to work on my own resolution skills. Despite the struggles, I believed we had a happy and loving relationship. There was laughter, connection, those small moments that hold you together. Until this week, my birthday, of all days, when my husband told me he'd fallen out of love with me and wanted a divorce. I was blindsided. He told me our inability to handle conflict together was the reason, that for years he'd seen this coming. I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. I'd always checked in with him to make sure he was happy, and he always said yes. Then, suddenly, his words turned so cold, vicious, even, that it was like I didn't know him at all. In 16 years together, I'd never heard him talk to me like that. He told me he dreaded being in a room with me, hated being intimate. And when he told me he wanted 50-50 custody of our kids, my heart broke all over again. My babies are my life. Friends and family began to ask me if he was cheating. I'd been working 12-hour shifts, relying on him for school pickups, but lately he was working through lunch or delaying picking up our kids from my parents' house. I was so grateful for how hard he worked for us. I didn't want to believe he was unfaithful. But late one night, driven by desperation and fear, I checked his phone. That's when my whole world broke open. Nude photos, of both of them. Videos of them having sex at work. At hotels. There were even selfies of my husband waiting in my son's chemo room, as if that was a totally normal setting for these messages. I found conversations about our arguments, with her, the mistress, telling him that I needed to get a fucking clue, and celebrating that he could put the blame back on me. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself before I confronted him. He admitted he's in love with her and wants to be with her. He told me it's complicated, that she hasn't told her own husband about their affair. It's been going on for over a year. My son was diagnosed with cancer in September. That fact alone made me feel so sick to my stomach, realizing what he'd been doing behind my back through all these months. Despite all of it, I was destroyed by the thought of losing him. Those messages, he didn't sound like the person I'd spent 16 years of my life with. That night, I told him to go sleep at his work office. But the next day, he called and said he wasn't leaving, that he wanted to be with the kids and stay in the house until things are finalized. He technically has a right to his own home, but his presence makes me physically ill. I am absolutely miserable, devastated, and lost. Knowing where he goes every time he leaves the house turns my stomach. I told him that, legally, I'm still his wife, and I do not want him speaking to his mistress, at all, when he is under my roof or around my children. He agreed, but after so much deception, nothing he says means anything to me anymore. I can't even imagine being stuck in this limbo for months. He actually asked me if his mistress could be around my kids. The rage, sadness, and helplessness I feel is almost too much for me to bear. My kids haven't been told the truth yet, but they can sense something is wrong, and I'm trying desperately to hold it together, relying on friends and family to help me. Now there's the house. He wants to sell it, but my parents might be able to buy him out. I haven't said a word about this to him, since I don't want to make anything easier for him at this point. But my credit is only May, interest rates are through the roof, and I'm afraid I'll lose my low interest rate from a few years back if we do the buyout. Everything feels like it's slipping away all at once. I can't eat. I've lost 10 pounds in a week. I can't sleep. I have never, ever been this depressed. In just 1 week, every part of my life has been threatened. My marriage, my family, my children's stability, even the roof over our heads. Someone please tell me it gets better. Right now, I'm barely hanging on. Update 1. It took me a while to respond, but I am finally in a much better place now and wanted to share my story, in case it might help someone else going through this kind of pain. First and foremost, my son is officially cancer-free. He rang the bell for chemo completion at the end of 2024, and now he is healthy and living a normal childhood together with his siblings. I am truly so grateful to have reached this point. I took the advice of so many wise voices and got the best attorney in town. I even called multiple other high-talent ones for consultations, since I'd learned that would create a conflict of interest that would prevent my husband from being able to hire them later. I filed for divorce in August 2024, and by November our split was final. My attorney guided me through every step, even ghostwriting my paperwork and responses so that my ex never knew I had legal help on my side. At the time, I told my ex that I was trying to figure out the best housing scenario for our kids. My oldest was still in the thick of chemo, and on top of that, he's autistic, which means he doesn't cope well with change. I knew that if we sold the house, the boys would lose their childhood home and have to change schools, and that upheaval would be so difficult for them. By some miracle, my ex voluntarily offered to walk away from the house and give up hundreds of thousands in equity if I would pay off his debts. He had maybe $30,000 in debt and a car payment, so my amazing parents stepped in and helped pay him off. We essentially bought him out of his share while keeping my low interest rate from when I first bought the place. Up until this point, my ex hadn't shown an ounce of remorse for what he'd put us through. I think the gravity of his actions on the kids finally hit him, but honestly, he was so far gone in his affair fog that he probably just wanted to wash his hands of me as fast as possible. The second he made the offer to walk away from the house, I ran to my attorney to make sure it was all done correctly. We talked about title companies at first, but my attorney explained it wasn't necessary, that my ex could just sign an interspousal transfer deed along with our stipulated judgment, and the house would be mine, legally and officially. Meanwhile, my ex and the affair partner are still together. He's already told my kids about his girlfriend and plans to move in with her and my children in April. I have the kids in weekly therapy, thank God they're doing really well with it. My ex decided not to pursue 50-50 custody after all, so I have 70% custody. He gets them every other weekend and one random overnight during the week. That was completely his idea. At first, being away from my babies was so hard, but I kept reminding myself that they are safe and happy with their dad during those times, and I started to use that time to focus on myself. Because of this custody arrangement, and I don't think he fully thought this through, he now pays me a substantial amount in child support every month. That's been incredibly helpful. I poured energy into revamping our home, redecorating, making it my sanctuary. I absolutely love it. Meanwhile, my ex is renting a small apartment in a less desirable part of town. Word eventually got back to the affair partner's husband, who is aware now, and they're in the process of finalizing their own divorce. As for myself, I am thriving. I lost a significant amount of weight, I go to the gym regularly, and I keep up with church and therapy every week. I have dedicated myself to self-growth and have transformed into a person radiating peace and contentment. I treat myself to beauty appointments, hair, nails, lashes, and my confidence has never been higher. Of course, my ex still tries to push my buttons, speaking to me with that same old condescending tone. But I took the best advice and greyrocked the hell out of him. He truly doesn't know what to do with himself anymore. It makes me laugh inside. I feel like I've pulled an Uno reverse he just can't process. Between my mental growth and my physical changes, he often looks visibly confused. Amusingly enough, the affair partner has put on a fair amount of weight, and while I normally root for other women, after everything she's done to me, I have to admit I take a small, secret joy in hearing people's commentary about it. As for my kids, I keep all conversations about my ex's new relationship age appropriate. They don't know how that relationship started, but if they ever ask when they're older, I'll always be honest with them. Now, I'm dating again. It's scary being back out there, but I'm determined to trust in time, consistency, emotional intelligence, and genuine effort. We all deserve that. Looking back, I am so incredibly grateful to still be here, and to everyone who pushed me to reach out for help. I struggled with suicidal thoughts for a long time, but getting a psychiatrist and starting on medication has changed my life and given me a second chance to truly live. Update 2. The week he was supposed to move the kids into his girlfriend's place, they both got pulled into HR. It wasn't me. Her husband sent their employer everything. Videos, timestamps, the whole digital paper trail, and the company did their own digging. Security footage, work devices, policy violations. He ended up resigning the same day to avoid a termination on his record. She wasn't offered that courtesy. Watching him carry a cardboard box to his car felt like the end of a movie I didn't audition for, but somehow starred in. The move-in never happened. She went to her sister's for a while, and he scrambled into a one-bedroom off the freeway, air mattress for the boys in the living room, his bed shoved against a wall. My 6-year-old told his therapist he counted the sirens like sheep, and my 8-year-old started asking if his dad's house could not have yelling on the nights they were there. The therapist wrote a letter, I filed to modify. We ended the midweek overnight and turned it into a dinner visit. The judge signed it without a blink. He looked tired on Zoom court, smaller than I remembered. Someone called CPS on me a week later. The report said I withhold medical care and leave the kids alone. The investigator was kind, sat at my kitchen table, watched my toddler attack applesauce with a spoon, saw the charts on the wall for meds and appointments, the binder of oncology, notes, the therapist's letters. Case closed is unfounded within days. I didn't sleep until I had the confirmation in my hand. 2 nights after that, he texted, then actually called, voice cracking, and said it wasn't him but he found out who made the report. I didn't ask, he offered. It was her. He said he was sorry for the first time in this entire saga, and for a second I could hear the boy I met at 19 trying to push through the man he's become. Then I hung up and went back to making dinosaur-shaped sandwiches for the school field trip. Financially, losing his job hurt his pride more than it hurt us. He found another one in the same field within 6 weeks, lower title and pay, but stable. We recalculated child support by the book. He assumed I'd let him float a couple months. I sent him a screenshot of the judgment and told him to take it up with the state's disbursement unit. He pays. He complains to anyone who will listen. The sun still rises. His girlfriend tried to pick my kids up from school one afternoon without telling me. She gave the officer first name like it was supposed to mean something, but our school's secretary has a spine of steel and a phone that works. I was there in 10 minutes. I updated the pickup list again that night and had our parenting app do that satisfying little delivered check mark as I informed him that no one other than the 2 of us is authorized. He didn't argue. I think even he knew how close that was to blowing up. In the middle of all of this, something unexpected and good happened. My job offered me a day shift position that pays more with fewer weekends. I cried in the break room like a crazy person. My boys think it's magic that I can go to their soccer practice now and still be home to make popcorn on movie night. We took a cheap beach weekend in an ugly little motel with floral bedspreads, and they made me a crown out of pipe cleaners. I wore it to the vending machine like it was a tiara. He asked to meet to talk last month. We sat in a coffee shop in a strip mall. He said he'd made a mistake, that the fog had lifted, that he missed our family. He cried. I don't think I'd seen him cry since our first was born. I listened because I owed that to the version of myself who used to dream up baby names with him at 2 a.m. Then I told him I believe in consequences and healing, both, and that healing doesn't always mean backtracking. He nodded and then asked if I'd keep my last name a little longer so the kids don't have to adjust to seeing it change. I told him I already filed the name change and they'll adjust to a mother who is happy and healthy. He didn't have a response to that. As for her, I've stopped filling in the blanks, but I do know this: she emailed me a paragraph about starting fresh and wanting to combine households cooperatively and asking if we could share calendars so she can feel included. I stared at it for a long time. Then I archived it. My attorney would have been proud of how profoundly boring my eventual reply was, sent through the parenting app using exactly 3 sentences and 0 emotion. There is a door into my life called respect, and she doesn't know where it is. If you're wondering about the house, my interspousal transfer deed recorded, the title shows only my name, and I got the letter in the mail with a little county seal that felt like a medal. I refinished the cabinets myself on a Saturday while the kids were at their dad's, paint in my hair and a podcast in my ear. It looks like a new kitchen. It smells like coffee and lemon cleaner and a life I'm making on purpose. Dating is still happening, slowly, deliberately. I met someone who brings steady instead of fireworks, and I've learned steady can light up a room just the same. No introductions to the kids, no rush, just time and actions lining up with words. It's funny, people keep telling me I look different. I think they mean I don't flinch anymore. Update 3. His grandmother died. The one who used to send crocheted blankets and thought every baby needed booties. My kids loved her. I ironed little button-downs and packed tissues and sat 3 pews back at the church so they could see the slideshow. He was there with his mother, eyes red, jaw tight. She showed up, too. She tried to slide into the family row like she belonged there, perfume too sweet under the lilies, and his mom didn't even turn her head when she said, "Not today." She moved. That should have been the end of it, but during the graveside prayers she drifted toward my kids, arm out, like this was her moment to prove something. I stepped between them without raising my voice. A pastor, of all people, handed me a small bottle of water like he was handing me a sword. We left after the doves, before the sandwiches. 2 days later, she was at my 6-year-old's soccer practice. She parked herself on the sideline with oversized sunglasses and waved like we were co-parents at a carnival. I told the coach I'd be back, called the non-emergency line, and we finished practice like normal while a cruiser idled under eucalyptus trees. Report filed. The officer was measured and thorough. Don't engage. Document. I could have stitched that on a pillow. I went to the courthouse the following morning with a folder that felt like it weighed as much as my toddler. Incident notes, the CPS closure, the attempted pickup from school, that day at the funeral, the parenting app messages. Temporary orders granted in 15 minutes by a judge with reading glasses on a chain. I ugly cried in the parking lot, then drove home and made grilled cheese that looked like hearts if you squinted. The hearing for the permanent order was set for 3 weeks later. I slept through the night for the first time in months. At the hearing, she wore white. He sat 2 rows behind her, pretending he wasn't with her, then whispering into her shoulder when he thought no one was looking. I told the truth under oath. The school secretary wrote a statement in that neat, looping penmanship that always makes me think of recipes. The coach came on his lunch break. The judge read every line and asked me exactly 2 questions. Then he looked at her and said, "You are not to attend children's events, you are not to approach petitioner or the minor children at any location, you are not to contact them by any means, you are not to be on school grounds, and you are not to use third parties to do what you are prohibited from doing." 3 years. He pressed his lips together when he realized the order covered exchanges, too, which means if he wants to see his kids, he has to do it without her shadow in the background. He nodded. She did not. On the way out, he asked if we could figure this out informally. I told him that's what got us here. Because the universe likes to stack absurdities, tax season hit at the same time. He claimed both boys on his return by accident. It wasn't an accident, it was a $3,000 try. A letter from the IRS arrived with a bunch of numbers and the kind of language that sounds like a slow drumbeat. I scanned the judgment and mailed it in with the exact kind of politeness that keeps bureaucracies humming. I also emailed his new HR department my wage withholding order when he forgot to update it at his new job. Garnishment started the following paycheck. He called it punitive. I call it math. There was a bright spot that didn't feel like it had to be earned with suffering. Make-A-Wish called. His wish was simple and enormous. He wanted to go behind the scenes at the aquarium and feed a sea turtle. We did. A volunteer put a bucket in his hands and he held romaine like an offering while this ancient, gentle face glided up and took it. He laughed, That full body laugh that makes people in other rooms smile. We stayed at a hotel with carpet that had starfish on it and ate pancakes shaped like dolphins. He collected plastic key cards like they were treasure. I kept one in my wallet. A rectangle that said, "You get to have this. Work is still good. Better." I passed a certification exam I was too scared to sign up for last year. My supervisor printed out a little certificate on cardstock that made me feel 10 and 25 at the same time. My boys made me a banner out of printer paper that said "Mom Smart" with 6 exclamation points. We hung it over the coffee pot because obviously. There was a weekend when the kids came home quiet. They'd been with him in his new place, the one with cabinets that don't close all the way and a neighbor who plays the same bass line every night like it's a ritual. My oldest told his therapist he didn't like it when the girlfriend banged the door and said words. The therapist looked at me. I looked at the floor. We added it to the packet. I'm not in the business of yanking time away from a good father. I'm also not in the business of pretending this is okay. We agreed to do exchanges at the police station lobby for a while. Neutral ground with vending machines and a sign about not bringing pets inside. My toddler tried to feed a foil-wrapped granola bar to a ceramic Dalmatian statue. We all do what we can to get through. The girlfriend sent me a florist arrangement with a note that said truce. I donated the flowers to the oncology floor and threw out the card. They looked better next to an 4-pole anyway. She also made a burner Instagram and requested to follow my private account like I'd suddenly become an influencer for moms who like boundaries. I printed the notification and tucked it into the file. It's amazing what Manila can hold. He filed to modify, again. He said he wanted his midweek overnight back now that he was on track. He had a letter from his therapist. I had letters from ours and the order the judge had signed last month. We met with the same commissioner who knows our 6 last names by heart now. She didn't raise her voice. She asked him if anything material had changed in the children's lives that would make a change in schedule in their best interest. He talked for 6 minutes. She took 30 seconds to deny it. He startled like he'd expected applause and got a gavel. I went on a second date with Steady. Then a third. He fixed my garbage disposal over FaceTime while my toddler narrated each step like it was a bedtime story. He never asks for pictures of me at 11 p.m. He asks if I ate dinner and then sends me a recipe for something with chickpeas that the boys actually will eat. No, the kids still haven't met him. They know there's a person who likes fixing things and makes me laugh at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. They call him the Robot Man because of how the phone props up against the sugar jar when I'm chopping onions. That's enough for now. In the margins, I keep carving out these human moments, teaching my 8-year-old to make eggs without burning them, the 6-year-old reading out loud and tripping on silent letters like they're pebbles, my 2-year-old falling asleep draped across me like a cat. The jasmine on our back fence finally bloomed. It smells like a promise I don't have to keep for anyone but myself. The last piece, in case you're wondering. The name change finished. I held the stamped order in my hand and it was like holding a small, official breath. I signed it at the DMV with a pen attached to a chain and walked out into sunlight that felt like it knew my name. People keep telling me I look different. I think they mean I stopped waiting for impact and started living like the ground under me is mine. Update 4. It started with glitter. The school did family art night, the kind with butcher paper on tables and glue sticks that never have caps. I was helping my 6-year-old make a lopsided rocket when the secretary ducked her head into the cafeteria and found me by name. "You have a delivery at the office," she said, face neutral. A white box tied with ribbon sat on the counter like a prop. Inside were cookies shaped like soccer balls with "Proud Bonus Mom" piped in green. No card. I didn't have to squint to see her handwriting in the loops of the P. The row doesn't need frosting to count. I closed the lid, asked the secretary to stick it in the staff room fridge, and called the same non-emergency line I could dial in my sleep. The officer took the box into evidence like it was a dead bird. Report filed. 2 days later a note fell out of my 8-year-old's backpack when I lifted his lunchbox. "You don't have to be afraid of me," it said. "We're family now." The S in afraid was backwards. I stared at it so long the lines started to blur. I used tongs to put it in a gallon bag. My therapist would be proud. The detective assigned to our case called it exactly what it was, contact through a minor. He asked me to bring the stack. I brought the stack. He called the DA. A week after that, I was in a little courtroom with high windows and a clock that ticked loud enough to mark my pulse. She pled no contest to violating the order. Probation, fines, community service, and the condition we all needed: stay away means stay away. The judge extended my order to 5 years and read the words without adding heat. He didn't have to. She cried. He wasn't there. He called that night. He didn't ask how we were. He said, "I didn't know she did that." The thing about that sentence is that it folds up on itself the second it lands in air. I told him to please stop having emergencies that land on my porch. He went quiet and then said he was done, as if saying it turned it into true. She moved out of his place the next week. He told the boys she went to take care of her sister. My 8-year-old said, "She doesn't have a sister," like he was reading a line out of a book he'd already finished once. I asked our therapist to add another hour to our month. She did. Somewhere between all that, the universe tossed me a softball. The shelter had a litter of puppies that looked like bad ideas in fursuits. The boys and I went just to look, which is something people say right before they make room for a dog bed. We came home with a freckled mutt whose ears can't decide which direction is up. They named her Pickles. She sleeps so hard she dreams, paws twitching like she's chasing whatever almost got away. The house sounds different with her collar tags clinking against the bowl. My toddler drops blueberries on purpose to make her nose crinkle. I didn't realize how much we needed a creature who doesn't lie and thinks we hung the moon because we can open a bag of kibble and throw a tennis ball. He filed to modify again anyway. Same judge, same chain on her glasses. He had printouts from a class that required him to watch videos about conflict with titles like Bridging the Gap. He asked for midweek overnight back. I brought the DA letter, the probation terms, the evidence bag receipts with case numbers typed in neat rows. Has anything material changed in the children's circumstances? She asked again. He talked about moving forward. The judge looked at me. I said, they're sleeping. They're eating. They're laughing. They're safe. She denied his request before my coffee could cool. He deflated but signed the minute order without arguing. Progress, I guess, if you squint. Money, because there's always a ledger somewhere. The state sent a notice that his arrears dropped to zero and the garnishment recalculated with his tiny raise. He texted that he wanted to pay me directly to avoid confusion. I forwarded him to the same P.O. box that eats checks and spits out receipts. He called it impersonal. I call it peace. I took the boring, steady extra to buy a level, a post hole digger, and 4 bags of cement. We built a swing set in the backyard on a Saturday that smelled like sunscreen. Pickles tried to steal the bolts. The boys took turns in crooked arcs at first, then straighter ones, squealing like a flock of birds. He missed a pickup. Then another. Traffic the first time, a mix-up with calendar sync the second. I logged it. I didn't write a speech about priorities. The state-issued bench in the police lobby has my name carved into it by some other tired parent who wanted to leave a mark. The vending machine ate my dollar and the officer behind glass shrugged like maybe that was a mercy. Work pulled me for jury duty. I packed a snack box that looked like a daycare field trip and a binder tab like it wanted extra credit. He had the boys that day and texted 2 hours in to ask what the red bottle was for. My 8-year-old sent him a photo of the med chart like a man sliding a map across a table. I sat in a dim hallway under a portrait of a judge who looked like every library book ever and felt something unclench. He didn't do it right away, but he did it. Later, when I tucked them in, my oldest whispered, I told him twice. He was proud of himself. It felt like hope disguised as a reminder. Because the absurd doesn't call ahead, I got an email from our CPA asking if I could hop on a call, because the IRS sent a second letter. He'd tried the injured spouse route for himself for the same year he took both dependents. I laughed in a way that made my accountant snort. I faxed exactly what I'd already faxed and went back to my life. He called it complicated. I call it copy and paste. She violated probation. Of course she did. I was at Costco with a flat cart and an existential amount of toilet paper when she rolled past me in the cereal aisle and said, "We're both victims of him," like she was trying on solidarity in a mirror she didn't own. I stared at a mountain of Lucky Charms and said nothing. A store camera is still a camera. I walked to customer service, asked for a manager, and then asked for their incident report policy in the same voice I used to ask the preschool teacher where they keep the extra wipes. Detective called me back before I'd even loaded the trunk. He handled it. She got a day in a gray room and a lecture she wasn't ready to hear. No jail, but a bright red warning line under her name. He texted, "I'm sorry again." My phone didn't know what to do with the repetition, so I let it sit there like a coupon I wasn't going to use. Something simple and huge. My 8-year-old was invited to a birthday party at a trampoline park and I didn't have to fake a headache to leave early because he got tired before he got overwhelmed. He ate cake with blue frosting teeth and didn't ask to go home once. I cried in the car on the way back while he argued with his brother about whether dogs dream in color. He's still cancer-free. The word maintenance lives in our calendar like a quiet roommate. I planted tomatoes. They're leggy and ridiculous and I love them anyway. Steady is still steady. We moved from recipes to letting him fix the hinge on my pantry door in person while the kids were at their dad's. He brought his own drill and a bag of bolts in a coffee tin. We sat on the floor afterward and ate takeout on the rug because I forgot plates. He told me his worst joke and I laughed hard enough to scare Pickles. Weeks later, the boys met him in the most boring way possible. He waved from the porch, said hi, and asked if anyone wanted to help him carry a box of books in from the car. They did, because boys plus boxes is math. No titles changed. No one made speeches. He left after 20 minutes and the kids called him Robot Man anyway. It felt exactly like the kind of introduction I'd promised myself I'd wait for, ordinary. His father had a stroke. Not catastrophic, but not small. He texted me from the hospital parking lot asking if I could switch weekends. I did. Some things still matter, and some lines don't blur. The boys drew get well cards with stick figure fishing poles and misspelled grandpa in 3 different ways. He thanked me, and it didn't have an edge. For a day, the past didn't sit in the room like an extra chair. The name on my mailbox still looks new to me. The jasmine on the fence turned into tomatoes and then into sauce. I found the last of our wedding things in a box labeled random, a garter I never wore, the cake topper with tiny plastic faces that don't mean anything to me anymore, a card from his grandmother that does. I kept her card. I took the rest to the thrift store and didn't watch the clerk put them in the bin. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store for more screws and a packet of seeds I don't know how to grow yet. The cashier told me my kid had excellent manners when he asked for a sticker. I didn't cry until I got to the car. Update 5. The subpoena came taped to my door like a band-aid someone forgot to peel off. A civil case number I didn't recognize, a date, a time, a conference room on the 12th floor of a building with elevators that smell like old coffee. Her husband is suing her for the report to CPS. I sat at a long table with a glass bowl of mints in the middle and a court reporter whose fingernails clicked like a metronome. Their attorney tried to make eye contact feel like a trap. I answered questions with the same tone I used to ask my kids if they brushed their teeth. Yes, I received a note in my child's backpack. Yes, the cookies were piped with proud bonus mom. Yes, the school has a statement. Yes, there is a restraining order, and yes, she violated it. There was a moment when my throat went dry and I took a sip of water and watched the condensation slide down the glass and thought about nothing except gravity doing its job. Afterward, in the garage that makes tires squeal at every turn, her husband said, "Thank you," without making it about me. I drove home with the windows cracked and the radio low. Pickles put her chin on the console at a stoplight like she was the one who needed to make sure I was okay. He moved. Not out of state or across some line he can't cross back over. Just 3 miles closer, into a duplex with cabinets that close and a lemon tree in the tiny yard that drops fruit like yellow planets. The boys came home smelling like pizza and lemons instead of sirens and arguments. My oldest held up a wrinkled drawing of a room with a bed against the right wall and said, "We got to pick our sheets," like that was the most grown thing a person can do. I emailed our therapist from my phone in the grocery store and she wrote a sentence I've wanted to see for 2 years. The children report a sense of predictability at father's residence. We added one midweek dinner back, at the library with fluorescent lights and chairs that seem to scold anyone who slouches. Neutral ground where a librarian with a cardigan and an excellent frown knows our names and the row by its case number. It was steady. Until a hold appeared for my 8-year-old, Bonus Mom's Big Day by an author no one has ever heard of, and the pickup slip had her name in the corner where it says who placed it. The librarian lifted one eyebrow, turned to the little black dome on the ceiling, and printed a second slip like a receipt for common sense. Detective called before it even buckled. Probation violation. Another courtroom with high windows and a judge who reads in a voice that sounds like a rulebook. More community service. The row extended to cover library accounts because apparently we have to tell the universe that a loophole is a loop, not a door. My oldest IEP meeting felt like sitting at a potluck where everyone remembered to bring something useful. The school psychologist had data. The OT had a swing. The teacher had post-its in 5 colors. I had a binder that grows like a coral reef. He came 10 minutes late with hair that looked slept on and asked for a pen. He listened. He signed. When the OT said we'll add a visual schedule at his desk, he nodded instead of arguing. It felt like a small rearranging of furniture in a room I've been trying to make livable for a long time. Work gave me a new badge with a different title printed under my name and a raise that isn't huge but feels like a sigh that turns into a full breath. I bought a used minivan the color of a blueberry and let the kids name it. They decided on blueberry because sometimes life is literal and perfect. Robot Man installed a backup camera and then left without staying for dinner because the kids were due back and we stick to the lines we drew. He met the boys in the kind of way that doesn't give anyone a story to tell later, on the porch, in daylight, with a box of books. "Hi," he said, and asked if they'd ever read the one about the dog who thinks he's a dinosaur. He didn't put his hands on anyone's head like he was claiming land. He carried the box in and then left. They called him Robot Man when they told my parents about it and asked if robots eat pancakes. We're moving exactly this fast on purpose. The IRS wrote me a letter that read like the sigh of a very tired person finally putting a file back where it belongs. They closed the case, adjusted the return, and the number in my bank account matched the number on the paper. I bought a roof patch kit and a roll of flashing. Robot Man showed up on a Saturday with a coffee tin that clanked like it was full of eccentric ideas and bolts in equal measure, climbed a ladder, and didn't take off his hat until the sun went down. The next rain sounded like rain, not a calendar reminder that I didn't have money. The boys fell asleep under a ceiling that didn't drip. Pickles snored like a freight train in miniature. He missed a pickup. Then he didn't. Then he was early and stood in the police lobby looking at the poster about how to tell if a car seat is installed correctly and didn't check his phone even once. The officer behind glass waved at my kids like they were regulars at a diner. When I wrote it down in the app, arrived on time, it felt like scratching a match. Because I live in a universe that doesn't care about plot arcs, I ran into her at a gas station at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday I wasn't supposed to be there. I put the nozzle in, hit the button, and stared at the numbers like they could save me from the possibility of a scene. She kept walking. So did I. The camera over pump 6 is probably very bored most days. Not that day. I emailed the station manager the receipt and asked politely for their retention policy. The detective sent a thumbs up emoji that I showed my therapist like a third grader with a sticker. He asked to talk, not at a coffee shop this time, but at the Lemon Tree. The boys were inside looking for a Lego piece like it was the last of its kind. He said his dad's rehab is hard and his mom is mean and he's really, really tired. I believed all of that and none of what usually rides in on the same sentence. Do you ever think we could do Sundays together? Like park days? He asked, voice small. I said I could think about what the boys need and not what we used to want. He said that was fair. He didn't bring up money. When he left, he handed my 6-year-old a lemon like it was treasure. We made lemonade with too much sugar and it tasted exactly like childhood pretends to. There was a day when the sky lost its mind and rain came down sideways. A fender bender happened in front of the school at pickup, nothing broken except bumpers and someone's weak. He called from the curb, voice shaking. We're okay, they're okay, I need you to talk to them, he said, and put the phone on speaker. We're okay, my oldest said like he'd rehearsed it. He was brave and shaky and all knees. I pulled up 2 minutes later with Blueberry's wipers fighting for their lives, took my kids, and handed him a paper towel because sometimes kindness is the most efficient thing in the room. We added the police report to the file, not as a weapon, just as a page. Court again, because of course. Same commissioner, same glasses on a chain, same question about material change. He said he finished the class with modules and stars and quizzes. I said the kids are sleeping and there have been no sirens and the library is neutral. The commissioner looked at him the way a teacher looks at a kid who finally did homework 2 days in a row and said, consistency before expansion. Denied without prejudice. He didn't argue. He looked at the lemon tree through the window like maybe it could testify on his behalf. My oldest joined the school's little engineering club where they build bridges out of straws. He brought home a triangle that didn't collapse under a stack of textbooks and that felt like a metaphor I didn't have to stretch. My 6-year-old is reading faster and laughs at silent letters like they're the punchline to a joke. My toddler counts dogs on our walks and sometimes includes cats because they look like they could be dogs if you squint. Pickles learned leave it and only steals socks now when she is very stressed, which is usually when the mailman is wearing shorts. On a Tuesday that felt like any other, I found a birth certificate I hadn't looked at in a while I was digging for a warranty. My name on it is the new one. It still makes me catch my breath the way a song does when it hits the note you didn't think it could. I planted zinnias while the boys threw a ball for a dog who believes in our competence more than anyone. The tomatoes are trying again, ridiculous and leggy and determined to feed us anyway. Robot man fixed the pantry hinge that keeps sighing open, and my 8-year-old asked him if robots dream. Only about pancakes, he said, straight-faced, and for a second my whole life felt like a room I built on purpose, with windows I open, and a door I can close when I want to.